Whenever you're ready, Chris.
Okay, should I? That that doesn't look like the right one. Let me see here. Huh. That's weird. Okay, here we go. So we'll get rolling. So good morning and welcome to the 2022 UIC SUAA Fall Forum. I'm Chris Keys, the president of the UIC chapter of the State Universities Annuitant Association. We appreciate your joining us today, and we hope to hear from folks during the question and answer period with our speakers. For all retirees and for those soon to be retired and for those who like to be informed about important things, staying current on the status of the State University Retirement System, or SURS, the organization that manages our pensions and invests our pension funds, is a priority. Today, we'll learn about the current status of SURS and its future direction from Suzanne Mayer, the executive director of SURS, and Kristen Houch, the director of legislative and stakeholder relations. I'd like to welcome Linda Brookhart, if she's joined us. She's the executive director of SUAA statewide, which is the overarching organization of SUAA for all 56 public colleges and universities in Illinois. We're glad that she's joining us. Today, we're fortunate to have the valuable assistance of the UIC SUAA board in planning and leading this program. In particular, I'd like to thank Cynthia Herrera-Lindstrom, our chapter's director of communication, for developing the notice for the Fall Forum, and Merrill Gassman, our webmaster, for his good work handling the publicity, registration, and technology. There's probably more things we could give you, Merrill, but 3 seems like plenty.
I'm a glutton for punishment.
Larry Clark, our treasurer, and now also the treasurer of SUAA statewide, will introduce our speakers and facilitate the question and answer portion of the forum. And Meena Rao and Ann Burkhart, the co-chairs of program planning, will be monitoring the chat for questions as part of the Q&A. We appreciate the comments and interest that many of you have shown in the UIC SUAA chapter over the past few months. Some have told us that you would be glad to help strengthen the chapter by telling your colleagues about SUAA and asking them to join. We'd appreciate it if you would help us get the word out about the organization. You can tell your coworkers and retired colleagues that the State University Annuitants Association, or SUAA, is a unique organization because it's the only one that focuses centrally on public university faculty and staff and our retirement benefits. SUAA protects the pensions and benefits of those who presently receive them, and at least as important, those who plan to receive them in the future. We see the editorial pages and the letters to the editor, the proposed legislation, and just yesterday, the ballot questions that push for changes that could weaken our constitutional protections for pensions and other benefits. These efforts often mistakenly attack our well-earned and well-deserved benefits as a way to improve the state's fiscal standing. So we need an organization like SUAA to protect our pensions, health care, and other benefits. SUAA fought hard to protect the state payment for our health care coverage when the legislature tried to take that away several years ago. And SUAA also took legal action when the legislature tried to cut our 3% annual pension increase back significantly. Our local chapter works with the state SUAA organization. We hold regular education sessions like this one. We reach out to legislators and share information via social media. Our website, let's see, I should be moving these things along. Sorry, I'm focused on talking. Meryl, can we move this ahead a few?
Well, you're in control.
I'm in control, huh?
Yeah.
I'm not that in control, turns out.
There
we go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So I wanted to get to this slide because it has the URLs for our chapter and for the statewide SUAA. Yeah, so the website has more information about the chapter, the activities that we do, and how to join. So encourage you to take a look at that for that information, and also for membership forms.
Slight correction with the first URL, Chris.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is it org or not?
It's not correct. It should be SUAA.uic.edu. So I'll put that in the chat.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. I picked that up from somewhere, so I guess we're spreading misinformation. Yeah, so and the annual dues are very reasonable, only $47 annually, or about $392 a month. I think of it as inexpensive insurance for my pension and healthcare premium. Yeah, so we appreciate any help you can give us in terms of recruiting other members. But before, yeah, so that's basically the opening comments I wanted to make, and now I'd like to turn it over to Larry Clark, who will introduce our speakers.
Thank you. Welcome, distinguished speakers and all participants. My name is Larry Clark, currently the treasurer of UIC SUAA chapter, and as Chris had indicated, recently elected treasurer of the state SUAA. I'm also an employee of the University of Illinois Hospital in the finance department, and I plan to retire in 2024. The state university's retirement system provides a foundation of retirement income and financial security. Results of the election yesterday in Illinois appear to be favorable to the status quo. However, I wish to point out that the monitoring of legislative plans and regular contact with our state legislators by state SUAA and by us individually is key to continued retirement financial security. Now, with great appreciation, I introduce Suzanne Mayer and Kristen Houch. Suzanne Mayer is the Executive Director of the State University's Retirement System of Illinois. Since 2002, Mayer has served in a number of positions for SURS, including retirement counselor, counseling manager, director of outreach, and chief benefits officer. In February 2021, the SURS Board of Trustees appointed Mayer as the interim executive director of SURS. And in December of 2021, the board named her permanently to that position. Mayer received her Bachelor of Science in Business Management from Eastern Illinois University and Master of Public Administration from University of Illinois, Springfield. I'm going to continue with Kristen Houch, who is the Director of Legislative and Stakeholder Relations at the State University's Retirement System of Illinois. Prior to joining SURS in 2015, Houch worked in Illinois state government as a research analyst with the House of Representatives and a James H. Dunn Fellow and Assistant Director for Budget and Revenue in the Governor's Office of Legislative Affairs. Houch holds a bachelor's degree in political science and Africana studies from the University of Arizona and a master's degree in international relations from the University of Chicago. Thank you all for participating, and we look forward to your presentations.
Thank you,
Suzanne.
Larry, for the kind introduction there, both Kristen and I. We are happy to be here today. I think it's been a couple of years since you've heard from a SURS representative at one of your meetings. So a lot has occurred in that time. We've gone through the pandemic and a lot of initiatives have been ongoing at SURS. So we hope to update you on all of that today. I'm going to speak first, and then Kristen will give a brief legislative update at the end of the presentation. And then, of course, we're happy to take question and answers. So I'm going to ask Kristen to please share our presentation if she may.
And in order to do that, I need to have Chris stop sharing his presentation before I can share mine.
There we go.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Kristen. And you can go ahead and go to the first slide, second slide. One more. There you go. Thank you. So just to start, to take a quick look at our membership today, we have 244,728 members. That is across all three of our retirement plans, our traditional, portable, and retirement savings plan. And across both tiers, we are a two-tiered system. So that includes tier 1 and tier 2 membership. So you can see the breakdown there. We have over 73,000 active participants, but we have even more inactive participants. And those are the members that have money on file still with us, but they have not yet started any type of benefit or taken a refund. And then we have over 72,000 benefit recipients. So that includes all of our retirees, but it also includes those who are receiving survivor benefits or disability benefits. And to those benefit recipients, last fiscal year, we paid out $2.9 billion in payments. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the breakdown of our membership between our three retirement plans. So as a reminder, when a new member joins SURS, they have a choice between these three plans. The traditional plan and the portable plan are defined benefit plans. And the retirement savings plan is a defined contribution plan. Many of you may remember it formerly as the self-managed plan, but it did undergo a redesign and a name change in 2020. So the majority of our membership is in our traditional plan. That is the default plan. So it's the plan they are placed in if they do not make a decision. And then 25% in our portable plan and 17% are in the defined contribution retirement savings plan. Next slide, please. We often get asked about the breakdown of our membership between tier 1 and tier 2. So tier 1 members are those members who were hired into the system prior to January 1 of 2011. And then tier 2 members are the members that were hired on January 1, 2011 or later. And tier 2 members have a different benefit structure. and that benefit structure does come at a lower cost to the state. So we are asked often, how quickly the membership is becoming a tier 2 population. So on the left-hand side here, you can see under our contributing members, so these are members who are actively working in the system. We have more tier 2 members, 54%, than tier 1. And it was just within this past year that tier 2 members outpaced the tier 1 members. But it is growing pretty quickly. So I think in the next coming years, you'll see that number go higher and higher, and the tier 1 number will start to diminish a bit more. If we include our inactive members, which is all those members that still have money on file, but they're not actually contributing and participating in the system right now, we are still largely tier 1. 59% of that total population of contributing and inactive are tier 1, but this number has come down quite a bit. And so it probably won't be too long until tier 2 starts to overtake this population as well. As far as retirees, tier 2 members joined, most of them obviously would have joined the system after 2011. So they're just now becoming eligible for retirement. So we don't have a lot of tier 2 retirees, but we do have some. We're getting a handful each month. At last count, we had 70 tier 2 retirees, still predominantly tier 1 though, in the retiree population. As you can see, it's only 0.1% of annuitants that are tier 2 right now. Next slide. And I mentioned that tier 2 comes at a lower cost to the state. So you can see what that cost is for fiscal year 23 here. Tier 1 is costing 18.9% of the total payroll of our membership, while tier 2 is only 3.9%. So that's quite a difference. I will say that over time, that tier 2 number will go up. So it doesn't stay that low, but it will never reach the level of that tier 1 number. And then the DC plan, which is the retirement savings plan, it has a cost that stays the same from year to year. It's set by the pension code, and that is that the state contributes 7.6%. Under both tiers and under the DC plan, the member contribution is the same. For most members, that is 8%. Next slide. This is a current snapshot, or as of June 30, 2022, of the financial status of the system. We have defined benefit assets of $22.6 billion. We have defined benefit liabilities of $49.9 billion, which leaves us with unfunded liabilities of $27.3 billion, or I should say of that, $27.3 billion are unfunded, which gives us a funded status of 45.3% currently. And that is up from the last fiscal year. As of fiscal year 21, we were at 43.9%. So we are up, not a significant amount, but we are moving in the right direction. So that is positive news. Our investment return for June 30, 2022 was negative. It was negative 1.4%. However, we actually look at that as a positive number in comparison to public pension plans across the United States that are comparable in size to us. We ranked in the top 10% among peers as far as returns, and we came out well ahead of our benchmarks for the year. As you can recall, especially around June 30, the market was very volatile in fiscal year 22, so we were happy to come out with only a negative 1.4% return. And I'll speak a bit more to investments in a few slides. Next slide. We also have our defined contribution plans. So I mentioned the retirement savings plan, which is a core plan. And among our members' accounts, there are $3.5 billion in assets. We also have a supplemental defined contribution plan, which is known as our deferred compensation plan, or DCP. It is a 457B plan that was newly offered over the last couple of years. It is a plan that any of our members that are contributing to the system can participate in, regardless of what their CSRS retirement plan is that they've selected for themselves as their core plan. So this is a relatively new plan. So it currently only has 8.5 million in assets, but we are seeing new membership every day within that plan. So we're expecting that to grow quite a bit, and it will grow significantly after July 1 of 2023. Because at that time, we will be auto-enrolling new hires. So new hires by default will contribute to this supplemental plan. They can, of course, always opt out, but it will be the default for them to go into the program. Next slide. Our fiscal year 23 state certified contribution. So this is the amount that our actuaries had determined and the board agreed the state would need to contribute to the system in order to stay on track for the funding target to reach 90% funded status by fiscal year 2045. So for fiscal year 23, that state contribution amount was set at $2,118,567,000. And you can see the breakdown there of where that money goes. A decent portion of it goes towards the normal cost of benefits for the year, but the large majority of it, over 70%, goes to pay down the unfunded liability of the system. And then there is a small portion of it that goes to fund the retirement savings plan, the defined contribution plan. Now, it is good news that this year, you can go ahead and move forward, Kristen. This year, we have received not only the monthly payments to get us to that fiscal year 23 contribution amount by the end of the year, but we also have received an additional payment of $38 million that goes directly to pay down the unfunded liability of the system. And last fiscal year, we also received our full contribution plus an additional $58 million to pay down the unfunded liability of the system. And that $38 million and the $58 million are our portion of a larger payment, $200 million and $300 million, that went to all the state funded retirement systems to reduce our unfunded liabilities. Now, when you look at those numbers, it's not a large number compared to our unfunded liability of $27 billion, but it is a step in the right direction. These payments are the first additional payments we have received above the certified state contribution since the funding schedule was put in place into the 90s. So it's good news for the plan that the state is taking funding the program seriously. Next slide, Kristen. And looking ahead, our board is already working with our actuaries to determine what the contribution amount will be for fiscal year 24. At our board meeting last month, they set a preliminary amount for next fiscal year. And you can see that there, $2.1 billion. It's a little bit higher than the fiscal year 23 contribution, but it's not significantly higher, which was positive news. We actually expect it to be a bit more. So this is good news. You can see the breakdown there. And again, this is just an estimated figure at this point. The board will set the final fiscal year 24 state contribution amount at our December board meeting, and it will probably vary slightly from this amount here. Next slide. Moving on to talk a bit more about investments. So as I mentioned, our portfolio for fiscal year end 22 returned negative 1.4%. And I had mentioned that we were well ahead of our target, which is what you see there as a policy portfolio. That's our benchmark or target, was negative 4.9%. So we came well ahead of that. And like I said, we were in the top 10% among large pension plans across the United States. That's in comparison to over 65 large funds. We are under our assumed rate of return. The assumed rate of return is a long-term assumption. So it's what we would expect to return over 20 or 30 years. And that's 6.5% right now. So the fact that we're under it for 1 year is not a major concern. We are, over our longer term periods, generally either outpacing our assumed rate or coming right in around our assumed rate. So we are comfortable with that. And you can see what our returns and the assumed rate assumptions have been over the longer periods on this chart here. Next slide. And this shows how our portfolio is currently broken down. At the end of fiscal year 21, our investment staff and our consultants and board completed a very thorough asset liability study, which takes a close look at our asset allocation and the strategy of the portfolio. There were some adjustments made at that point. And namely, we set up our portfolio to take on a little bit more of a defensive structure. And so that would be, so when the market is extremely volatile, we're better protected against risk. With the funding status that we have being a bit lower, we want to make sure that we are protecting member assets. So the primary thing we did to accomplish that was add what you see there as the green slice of the pie, a crisis risk offset portion of our portfolio. And crisis risk offset investments are designed to perform especially well when the rest of the market is performing poorly. So it is 19% of our portfolio right now. And as an example, over fiscal year 22, that piece of our portfolio returned 12.2%, where the larger piece of our portfolio, that traditional growth amount, I believe, returned negative 16.5%. So the crisis risk offset really helped offset the negative returns from the market volatility in the traditional growth portfolio and in some of the other areas as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to move into some recent system initiatives, some things that we are working on now and that we have worked on over the last couple of years since we may have last spoken with you. One thing that you've probably heard about in some way or shape or form is the work we have done on our defined contribution plans. This took a significant amount of time over the past, really dating back to about 2018. But in 2020, we implemented a completely redesigned retirement savings plan, which was formerly the self-managed plan. And alongside that, we brought on a brand new supplemental 457B defined contribution plan, which is the deferred compensation plan that I mentioned briefly earlier. We looked really closely at the plan design of both of these plans. We wanted to eliminate some confusion. There were a lot of overlapping investment options available to members. So we wanted to streamline the investment option to get rid of some of that duplication. We also white labeled or SURS branded all of the investment options to make it a little bit easier for your not so investment savvy member to understand. And the largest thing we did is we added a new default investment option to both plans that is a lifetime income solution. And that is called the SURS Lifetime Income Strategy, or we refer to it as the LIS. And it's a bit different than some things you may have seen in a traditional retirement plan, defined contribution plan previously. It acts much like a target date investment option. If you're familiar with target date funds, it actually works exactly like a target date fund for the first several years of a person's career. But then as a member that gets closer to retirement, generally within 15 years of retirement, assets are automatically slowly moved into what is called a secure income portfolio. And in that portfolio, the assets that are there are purchasing guaranteed income for the member. So essentially, you would think of it as moving money to buy slices of income that are guaranteed, that will be there when the member gets to the retirement date. So they will have a monthly income amount guaranteed and available to them that does not go down even in market downturns. So this is to make the program feel a little more like a defined benefit plan with some guarantees while still being a defined contribution plan. And it has some other flexibility that is built in as well. That was something our defined contribution members desired. So I could talk about it for a long time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But I will also mention that the reason we have this in our supplemental program as well, which is a bit different for a supplemental plan. A lot of supplemental plans that you'll see in the private sector, especially, just focus on building a pot of money so that you can go buy a boat or pay off your house or whatever you want to do. You can still do that in this program, but by default, and this is especially beneficial to our tier 2 members who are going to be auto enrolled into this plan, it will generate additional income in retirement. Our tier 2 members that have that lower structure of benefit are likely going to need additional income, not just a pot of money. So they can take their SURS core plan, traditional portable retirement savings plan. They can take the benefit they'll get from that and layer on top of it the income they will get from this supplemental plan to hopefully together maintain their standard of living in retirement. So these are all things that we're very excited about. We've received a handful of awards for the work on these programs, and we hope that they will benefit our members into the future. Next slide. Something that we are undergoing currently that is a major initiative of the system is a complete pension administration system replacement. So what that is our pension administration system is the system that houses all of our member data. It is where we calculate all of our claims. It is the system we pay our benefits from. So it is the backbone of most of what we do at SURS. And it was implemented in the 90s. So it is about to be at the end of its life cycle where it can't even be supported. So we are completely replacing this. We are building from the ground up a new program. So it is estimated to take about 5 years, and we are just over year 1 of this. We started it in July of 2021. It could end up being a little longer than 5 years. We are checking the timeline at certain points to see if we need to adjust some things, but it will be positive news for our members. It should vastly improve our claims calculation processing times, and it should also improve the exchange of information between employers, which is something that does often slow down our claims calculation processes. In addition, it will come with a completely new member portal where you log in to see your account information, and it will include a lot of new self-service features, both for our active members and our retirees. So for example, you can do a couple things online right now, self-service, but a non-retired member would be able to start the retirement process, complete their application, and see it all the way through to completion online if they want to. They could still, of course, contact us in person as well. Next slide, please. We are also very focused. We've always been focused, but we have taken even a more, I don't know, we've just placed a lot more resources, I should say, towards cybersecurity and fraud prevention. And this, the reason why it's becoming more and more important is because so much is changing in the world of online activity. There's a lot of bad actors there that are finding new ways every day to get to information that is not their own. So we want to make sure we are protecting your information. Being a financial entity, we are definitely a target for cybersecurity issues and for fraud. But I am happy to say that we have not had any issues where a member or a non-member has had access to a member's account, or where fraud has seen its way through to completion, where somebody is trying to get our members' data. So we, over this past 2 years, have developed a full security team that is focused on cybersecurity and fraud. We did have an individual focused on that before, but we now have a team of 5 who are literally watching the changes that happen daily in the world that we will need to change our online systems to protect against. We have a security roadmap that we developed with a third-party vendor that we review quarterly with our board, and that our board wants to ensure that we are implementing everything that is suggested on that security roadmap. And one of the things we implemented this last year that you may have seen if you have tried to log into your account recently is we now have multi-factor authentication. And that's just when you log into your CSRS account, you are going to have a code sent to your text messaging or to email before you're able to enter online. And that's of course for your protection. I know we've had a lot of phone calls about it where members don't like taking that extra step, but it is to your benefit to make sure that nobody else gets into your account except for you. Next slide, please. Retiree health insurance. This is something that has been in the news recently that may have made its way up to the Chicago area. I know it's definitely been in the news here in Central Illinois. We are currently in the Medicare Advantage member open enrollment period that goes through November 30th. So it's all month. And members that are enrolled in one of our Medicare Advantage programs are able to make changes or enroll for the first time or to stop their participation. And Central Management Services, who is the administrator of the insurance programs, had announced recently that there would only be one carrier available for this program effective January 1 of 23, and that is Aetna PPO. And that did cause a lot of stir, especially locally here in Champaign, because of the major hospital that we have, Carl. It was reported in the press that Aetna, or that they would not cover Aetna doctors. So as you can imagine, a lot of our University of Illinois retirees here were very concerned about that. We have been directing all of our members to Central Management Services, or now My Benefits, which is the third-party administrator for Central Management Services, for carrier questions or to share their concerns, because CSRS does not play any role in contracting. We don't have any role in planned carrier coverage. I am happy to report to you, though, that I received an update from CMS. I believe we received this last week, but it was confirmed to me again today that they have reached a tentative agreement with Aetna and Carl. So here locally, at least, Carl will be covered come January 1. Aetna doctors will be covered at Carl. And again, that's tentative, but they fully expect that to see its way through to completion before January 1st. Next slide. SURS education. So I just wanted to give you an update on what we're doing now, somewhat post-COVID. I don't know that we can ever really say COVID is over, but we certainly are on the other side of some of the worst of it. Throughout the last 2 years, we have had to change a bit the way that we have provided services to our members. I'm very happy to say that we never stopped any service. We just had to do some of them a little differently. So for example, we halted our on-campus visits for a while, and we also stopped our in-person appointments, but we switched all of our educational offerings to virtual like we're doing here today. But we are back to now seeing members in person. So if somebody is getting close to retirement and they would like a counseling appointment, they can have one in person in Champaign or in Naperville. We are also doing limited on-campus visits, and we are continuing both telephone and video appointments for the members that do prefer a virtual option. Our lobby is open to the public. So far, our seminars are continuing to be all virtual, and that's predominantly because that is what our members have preferred. We get a lot better attendance that way, and we can reach a lot more people. And even with in-person appointments, they're available now, but by and far, the virtual option is the most popular. So as a reminder, members who are within 10 years of retirement can come in for a counseling appointment or sign up for any type of appointment we have here. And if you are a defined contribution plan member, whether it's in our retirement savings plan or our deferred compensation plan, there are guidance appointments available no matter what stage of your career that you are in. And we do have some contact information, I believe, at the end of this presentation that members can use to sign up for any of these offerings. And with that, I believe we have reached Kristen's portion of the presentation. So I am going to hand off to Kristen.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. My name is Kristen Houch, and I am the Director of Legislative and Stakeholder Relations for the State University's retirement system. I'm going to provide a brief legislative update. Suzanne talked a lot about the budget and the additional money that we received, which was excellent. And in addition to that, the General Assembly passed legislation extending the buyout program. And they extended the buyout program from June 30th of 2024 to June 30th of 2026, as well as authorized an additional $1 billion to finance the buyout program. And that $1 billion is in addition to the previous $1 billion they authorized, bringing the total up to $2 billion. And that amount is shared not only between SURS, but also with SERS and TRS. And as a reminder, there are two different buyout options. The first option is a vested inactive buyout, and the second option is a Tier 1 automatic annual increase buyout. And as a reminder, I think Suzanne mentioned it earlier, but a Tier 1 member is a member who first became a participant in SURS or a reciprocal system prior to January 1st of 2011. And a Tier 2 member is an individual who first became a participant of SURS on or after January 1st of 2011. And so under the vested inactive buyout option, which is the first option available, a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 member can elect to receive a one-time lump sum payment equal to 60% of the present value of their benefits under SURS in exchange for forfeiting all accrued rights and benefits in the system. So it's a buyout equal to 60% of the present value of benefits in exchange for foregoing any future benefits with the exception of retiree health insurance. The second option is the Tier 1 automatic annual increase buyout option, which is just available to Tier 1 members at retirement. And so at retirement, a Tier 1 member can elect to receive a one-time lump sum payment equal to 70% of the present value of the difference between the Tier 1 automatic annual increase in retirement annuities and a reduced and delayed automatic annual increase in retirement annuities. And as a reminder, the Tier 1 automatic annual increase is 3% compounded, and it begins the January 1st after retirement. The reduced and delayed automatic annual increase is delayed until the later of age 67 or 1 year after retirement. It's 1.5% interest, and it's not compounded. So under the Tier 1 AAI buyout, the member would have the option to elect to receive a one-time lump sum payment equal to 70% of the present value of the difference between those two automatic annual increases in exchange for receiving the reduced and delayed automatic annual increases in retirement. So that's an overview of the two buyout options, which were recently extended by the General Assembly. And I think it was also referenced earlier, but in case you missed it, there was an election yesterday. And as mentioned earlier, the House Democrats and Senate Democrats have maintained their supermajorities in both chambers of the General Assembly. And that matters because the composition of the General Assembly determines the legislative policies that are considered and ultimately passed by the General Assembly. And so to that point, veto session is tentatively scheduled for next week, November 15th through 17th, as well as November 29th through December 1st. Lame duck session has also tentatively been scheduled for sometime between January 4th and January 10th. And in order to pass legislation with an immediate effective date prior to January 1st, the General Assembly will need a supermajority of votes in both chambers, which as I just noted, they already have among the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats. And then beginning January 1st, in order to pass legislation with an immediate effective date, the General Assembly only needs a simple majority, so 60 votes in the House and 30 votes in the Senate. Potential topics for consideration during the veto session and lame duck session include the Safety Act and the Dobbs decision. There's also working groups on mental health, social media and online extremism, and firearm safety reform. Regarding pensions, there's only one potential item that we are aware of that could be considered at this time, and that is House Bill 1293, which would prohibit the state-funded retirement systems from investing in Russia and Belarus. And that legislation previously passed in early April before the chambers adjourned, and it's currently in Senate Assignments Committee. That is the legislative update. And I will advance to the next slide, which contains our contact information that Suzanne referenced earlier.
Thank you, Kristen. So that concludes our presentation. I do see that there are some questions in chat, so we will defer to you on how you'd like us to go about handling that.
Yeah, Mina and I will ask these.
Okay.
But thank you. Here are a few. What will happen if the market continues to fluctuate for another year? Has there been any discussion about that?
Okay, if the market would continue to fluctuate, I am assuming you're meaning the impact on our portfolio.
Yes.
I imagine we would see another year similar to this year. It's of course always possible we could produce another negative return, but our crisis risk offset and the other defensive strategies in our portfolio should help us to still perform better than most would expect. And the good news is when we have positive returns, they are smoothed in the funding schedule over 5 years. So for example, last year we had a very positive 23.8% return, but in the funding schedule, it's actually smoothed over 5 years. So it's considered over 5 years instead of just in that 1 year. And that helps offset some of our negative returns when we do have them in the periods of market volatility. So that 23.8 will actually still be having a positive effect next year in the funding schedule.
Oh, good. Similarly, somebody asked, can you say more about what type of investments are in the crisis risk offset category?
Sure. Crisis risk offset primarily is what's there's something called trend following. We also have long duration treasury and risk premia and long volatility. I think I hit them all. If you want a more thorough description of those, I would say that you should join our stakeholder meeting that we are going to have later in this month, because we will have our chief investment officer speak and he can speak to that in detail. But it's primarily something called trend following, which is something that, like I said, is designed to perform well when other areas of the market are performing poorly.
Thank you. That sounds very interesting.
Larry, can we just ask Suzanne if she would post that in the chat, the the meeting that you were just speaking about? So
Sure, yes, and I can speak to that real quickly as well. We are holding biannual stakeholder meetings, and it is a virtual town hall with content very similar to what we have shared today, twice a year, and anybody can attend. We'll have, union representatives, members, retirees, all kinds of different people attending. And our one for the fall is coming up on November 22nd. And the way it differs from what I've presented today is I will be speaking, but also our Chief Investment Officer, Doug Wesley, will speak. And so he will speak more in depth about investments than I have done today. And Kristen will have a probably a slightly more in-depth presentation as well. And that, again, is on November 22nd, but I will actually ask Kristen if she can find the link to that and share that to the chat.
Sure.
great, thank you. Sorry, Larry.
Oh, that's quite all right. Here's one. Carl is not the only provider that has had negative experience with Aetna. Does the CSRS board have any input on how due diligence is done with contract renewals or changes?
Sure, and that's right. Aetna and Carl was not the only concern that we have heard about. We've heard about concerns largely in the Champaign and Springfield areas, but I know there are concerns with Aetna across the state and probably in your area. Unfortunately, since we do not deal with the carriers and we do not deal with that coverage, we are not aware of all of the concerns. We are also not aware of all of the positives because we also have members that are happy with Aetna. So what we can do is we can share the concerns we receive, which we have with Central Management Services. Our board can do the same, and we can ask them to please consider our retirees all throughout the state and what they will need to have good coverage and be able to access their doctors. But they really have to take it from there. And quite frankly, we don't have a lot of sway when we do that. I'd say a much better mechanism is to work with a group such as SUAA, an advocacy organization. I know Linda's on the call and she attended a meeting here in Champaign not too long ago that had several retirees attend to speak about some of the concerns. And those type of forums I do think are effective because you are seen and heard. And that's probably the better way than to go through CSRS because we are more of just an administrator, but and not of insurance. Of course, we are administrator of the retirement program, but we do share all the concerns that we receive with Central Management Services. Just we don't have a lot of sway.
Here's one. Is there a financial match for contributions to the 457B plan?
Sure. The 457B plan has a mechanism that would allow for a employer match. It is up to the employer whether they want to provide a match. So as far as I'm aware, we may have one or two employers that have turned on that ability, but I don't think any of them are actually using it yet. But it is something that is there and available to our employers should they want to use it. And that would be determined on an employer by employer basis rather than it would happen for all employers. Right.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Let's see. All right. Can SUAA, well, this I guess would be for Linda, can SUAA provide a list of people who can employ, whom one can employ as financial advisors to address our retirement funds?
I don't know if Linda can speak.
Yeah, Meryl, do you think you can unmute Linda?
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the problem with this because of being statewide. We don't actually always know who the best people are to go to. So as I've been told before, ask your friends. But I do think that CSRS does provide an awful lot of fabulous information for you that will maybe comfort you in some of the decisions that you have made or want to make. So I'm gonna say I have people contact me who would like to be financial advisors to you, but what I find out that they also don't understand your pension system and how it works. And so then that becomes a negative for going too far outside your perimeter. So,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that, unfortunately, that's the same with health insurance. So, you've got to make sure that you know who you're working with and make sure that they understand your pension system and where else that you might have already invested your money. So,
Right. And I'll actually add to that. I know that you may want to get financial advice outside of SERS, which is fine, but do be very leery of any solicitations you might get. We often have financial advisors that may try to act as if they are actually us and send out emails to your campus. Somehow they might get your email and get you to sign up for an appointment. But if you ever receive an email like that, that doesn't have, doesn't come from SERS, doesn't have the SERS header, et cetera, it's not going to be from us. So just be very leery of that, because they would love to get a hold of all of our members. They know that that's a good population to get clientele from. But as Linda said, a lot of them don't understand our benefits. So if you do go to a financial advisor, I would definitely say at least also add to that having a SERS counseling appointment so that you can make sure you understand our benefits from one of our experts before you continue and talk to an advisor. And you can actually even have your advisor come with you to an appointment with one of our counselors or join you on a call so that they can hear the same thing you're hearing. But do make sure that you're being a bit careful about it and that you're also speaking with us.
I'd like to add too, because when a lot of the community colleges have benefit fairs and I see who is there, and some of the universities do too, and you will find some financial advisors there. Once again, and I know people are investing with them, which I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to do. I'm just going to support this again many times over. And yes, I do have a cold and I'm sorry. That make sure that whoever you are working with understands what kind of a plan you have. I mean, your defined benefit is so unusual anymore. So, and yes, and they will try to, well, a good person will not try to lure you away, a good financial advisor, but there aren't all good financial advisors. So just be aware.
Right. And be very leery if somebody suggests you take your money out of the pension. Maybe it is the best thing, but you definitely need to think about that before you do that if you're a vested member, because as I'm sure you're aware, pensions are worth a lot, and that's not something you want to give up without doing a lot of due diligence. And I know financial advisors would love to get your money. So they're not all bad. I'm not saying that at all. You just have to be careful and make sure you're doing your due diligence.
Thank you. For Kristen, what messages can we give, or can we have to give to our state senators and representatives, particularly those who've been reelected, and then similarly, which ones may be new to their districts?
That's a great question. SERS typically does not take policy positions on legislation, which is why we have a great representative in Linda Brookhart, who represents the policy angle for state, university, and community college active employees and retirees, and she can give you guidance as far as policy positions are concerned. But SERS, a lot of the role that we have in legislative affairs is educating policy members on, for example, the financial status of the system. I found that many of them are already very well aware of how underfunded pensions are in Illinois. And, I think we've seen a lot of positive steps taken by the General Assembly and the governor to provide additional funding for the systems. SERS always advocates for the full certified state contribution under the 1995-96 funding formula, as well as any additional contributions above that amount. So SERS is always, we always aim to be a neutral party. We don't take policy positions, but we serve to educate members of the General Assembly on the benefits and investments in the plan, and the potential impact of legislative changes. But as far as actual advocacy, would direct all of those questions to Linda.
Very good. Let's see, how are SURS counselors selected and educated? The requester had indicated that he's impressed with how knowledgeable and supportive they are.
Good, thank you. Our counselors have a wide variety of backgrounds. We don't have specific criteria such as a certain license or something like that for our defined benefit counselors, although some of our defined contribution counselors do have that. Most of their training is very rigorous and it's in-house because they are being trained on something so specific to SURS, and they are not released to interact with membership until they know our benefits in and out. And there's a very rigorous quality assurance program too, to make sure that you are only being told information that is accurate and that you do need to know to make informed decisions. Now, I do want to add on, our record keeper for our defined contribution programs, both the retirement savings plan and the supplemental plan, is Voya Financial. And we do have a few advisors that we work with at Voya Financial. They are Voya SURS representatives. So you may receive some things from them, or you may see them at a benefits fair saying they are with SURS, and they actually are. We work with them very closely for them to provide investment guidance to you about either of our defined contribution plans. They don't really do the full picture of outside investments, although they will talk to you about it a bit, but they are there to help you through the defined contribution plan investments. And they have a very specific educational background that speaks to that. I can't think off the top of my head the licenses that are required, but they do have some requirements as far as licenses that they have to be that with Voya. You can always know that if you're speaking to somebody at SURS, they have been incredibly well trained, and they are going to probably be your best bet on anything SURS related. Not probably, they are going to be your best bet on anything SURS related.
Oh, good. Thank you. It's good to know that individuals can bring their financial advisor to a meeting with SURS. Is that widely publicized?
I don't know that we actually have that publicized. I would have to review some of our materials. It's one of those things where it can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing because your financial advisor gets a little look at what you have here and might decide what they want of that. But if you are working with someone and you are going to go to them with your SURS information, it's almost better to bring them so that they can hear it from both of us. But we wouldn't necessarily encourage you to go get a financial advisor just for that purpose. But if you already have one, you want to bring them along, you can. I don't think it is widely publicized, but we do share that information when asked.
Just as an aside, I contacted a financial advisor out of TIAA, which is one of the 403B plans. And of course, we've got others too. They were thorough. And to that end, if you really want to just contact somebody, in effect, free of charge, one of those services might give you the information that you need. And they certainly seem to be adequately knowledgeable about, state pension benefits along with Social Security for people that are on both plans. And then here's one. Any thoughts on how the Illinois Constitutional Amendment ballot initiative, and he's indicating whether it passes or not, so this might be a future one, might have on SURS annuitants?
Kristen, I'll let you take that.
Yes. Which specific constitutional amendment? I guess I would need clarity on the question. Is it one that is out there in the General Assembly, or is it Proposition 1? Are you talking about the one that was just on the ballot for workers' rights, collectively bargaining workers' rights?
Yes, that's what he's indicating.
Okay, great. So SURS hasn't performed any type of an analysis on the impact that would have on pensions. The Pension Protection Clause is under Article 13, Section 5 of the Illinois Constitution. And that amendment that was on the ballot did not directly amend that specific provision of the Constitution. It was creating a new provision to the Constitution. So we haven't performed any type of an analysis, but I don't know if SUAA has or not.
No, we did not. In fact, I owe you a paper that was written because one of our members, who is a constitutional advocate, supporter, what do I want to say? She knows everything about the Constitution and losing. She wrote a paper, and it wasn't to be for or against unions or anything. She was talking about the opportunity that Amendment 1 would have to open up the Constitution for a constitutional convention. And in 2 years, we will be voting on that, or in 2028, we will be voting on whether to have a constitutional convention or not. So, you know, whether this helped to open up Pandora's box, we don't know. We just know that the unions are protected and protected further. So we didn't take a stand on this.
Are there other questions? Okay. And the submitter thanks you for that information. Linda, Kristen, that was good to know. And Mark, well, another person is indicating that thinks that TIA has moved away from supporting those in educational setting. They not be that knowledgeable. Pensioner beware. That's all I can say. It's like, you know, just be aware that in some cases, information that you get do take appropriately seriously, and it may not be full. So just, again, study it yourself too. Hearing not that many more questions, I just want to express my deep appreciation to Suzanne and Kristen for their talk. It was fascinating. And I am glad to hear that SURS is being directed by talented people such as yourselves. Yes, I guess I'll give you my applause too. So thank you. That was very interesting. And I look forward to the stakeholder meeting. We will, certainly it'll be on the SURS website, I would think, you know, to indicate the date and perhaps time.
Yes, and I think Kristen also put it in the chat. I can't remember the time, but it's again on the November 22nd.
1 to 2 p.m. on November 22nd. There is a link to register. It's obviously a free event, but if you go to that link that I put in the chat, you can register, and it will remind you and add things to your calendar so that you don't miss it. And we look forward to having you participate.
How good.
So yeah, thank you all for having us today. I'm always happy to come speak with us, UAA. I know you're doing a lot of great work for our members, and anytime our members call us and really want us to advocate for something that is a little out of our lane, as a retirement administrator, we always point them your way. We know that you're a very good group. And so we hope that you'll continue to support our members. We know you will. So happy to be here today. If you have questions after we sign off, feel free to send them our way. And as Kristen said, feel free to join the stakeholder meeting later this month as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have everybody have a great day.
Mhm.
Thank you, Meryl.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Meryl. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you,
good to-
Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
See you in a few.
Yep. See you soon.
Okay.